Let's speak clearly from the start. Maybe you've grown up, but you're still a child trapped in the body of an adult.
It doesn't matter how old you get, or how many responsibilities you carry on your shoulders. If you haven't mastered your emotions, if you react without thinking, if every decision you make comes from an impulse, you are still a man-child. And yes, this is a warning, because that child doesn't just destroy you from the inside. That child is your greatest threat. It's the root of your failures, the origin of your downfalls, and the hidden face of your ruin. Machiavelli knew this, he saw it. And he despised it. Because for him, power was a cold, surgical, ruthlessly rational art. There was no room for tantrums or poorly suppressed tears. He who rules with emotions is doomed to be ruled by them. And here comes the first dagger. Many of those you applaud, admire, or follow today are nothing more than big children, playing at being leaders, men who react like kids when the world doesn't respond as they expect. And you unknowingly might be one of them. Have you never wondered why you repeat the same mistakes over and over again? Why do your relationships fail? Why do you sabotage yourself when you are on the brink of achieving something? I'll tell you why: because you keep seeking instant gratification. Because you don't know how to wait. Because your inner world crumbles if you don't get what you want instantly. And the worst part is that you think this is normal. You've disguised it as authenticity, spontaneity, being true to yourself. Lies, it's just immaturity. Emotional infantilism with the makeup of modernity. Machiavelli didn't write to please you. He wrote to warn you, to show you that the world is a board where poorly managed emotions are broken pieces. The prince who doesn't control his impulses is a victim disguised as a king. You can dress him in expensive suits, give him an elegant title, even make him president or CEO. But if he hasn't matured, he will fall sooner or later. Because there's something that strategists know and children ignore. Patience is deadlier than any outburst. And you, if you don't learn this, will be cannon fodder. Listen well. Immaturity is not a cute flaw. It's not something that time heals on its own. It's a wound that grows with every bad decision made. And the most messed up part is that it doesn't hurt at first. At first it feels good, reacting on the spot. Shouting what you think, slamming the table when something angered you. It's addictive, it makes you feel powerful. But it's a false power. As false as the excuses you tell yourself to justify your failures. The man-child doesn't plan, doesn't analyze, doesn't calculate consequences. He acts, period. Like a cornered animal, and that in politics, business, and relationships is a surefire recipe for disaster. Because the world does not reward impulsivity. It exploits it. Do you want to know why manipulators always win? Because they know how to read the immature like an open book. They know which button to press, which word to use, which silence to let drop. And you, thinking you're in control, are already trapped before you speak. Machiavelli spoke of the cunning of the fox and the strength of the lion. Two animals, two strategies. But do you know what's not in that model? Children, because the child has no strategy. The child reacts, the child wants to win now. And that's why he loses later. The true leader, the one Machiavelli would admire, is not the most charismatic. He's the one who knows when to remain silent, when to move, when to seem weak in order to strike with force at the right moment. And none of this can be done by someone emotionally immature. But here comes the real blow. In this sick society, we celebrate big children. We make them stars, we give them microphones. Power followers, we applaud their impulsiveness. Their lack of filters, their arrogance disguised as authenticity. We say they're brave, when in reality they're slaves to their own emotions. Do you see the game we've become addicted to watching children govern? We laugh at their whims, defend them, imitate them, and then we wonder why everything goes to hell. You look inside yourself. How many times have you made a decision you knew was bad just because you couldn't resist? How many times have you hurt someone you cared about just because at that moment you had to say what you felt? That's not bravery, that's weakness. And you know it, but the truth hurts. So you prefer to disguise it. Machiavelli wasn't cruel, he was lucid. He knew that life doesn't reward the sincere, it rewards the cunning, and being cunning is not about lying. It's knowing when to speak, when to be silent, when to fake it to survive. Can you do that? Or are you going to keep being an emotionally dependent child, waiting for the world to reward you for being yourself? The truth is this: the world owes you nothing. Not love, not understanding, not second chances. What is not taken with strategy is lost with impulsivity. Emotional maturity is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the only way to remain steady when everything around you falls apart. It's what stops you from screaming when you're stepped on, and instead you write down the name. You observe, you wait, and you act when no one expects it. That's power, and you have it. But only if you let the child inside you die. Leadership doesn't begin with charisma. It begins with self-control. With that inner voice that says, wait. The one you drown every time you choose to react instead of think. The one Machiavelli would have considered your only salvation. Because history is not written by the impulsive, it's written by those who know when to appear weak, when to yield, when to disappear, and when to return with strength. So ask yourself right now, which part of you is making the decisions, the conscious adult or the wounded child? Because if it's the child, no matter what you achieve, it will crumble. And not because of the world. Because of you. That rage you feel right now is not against me. It's against you because you know there is truth in every word. And that truth makes you uncomfortable. It strips you naked. But it can also set you free. Because when you stop acting like a child, everything changes, your environment changes. Your relationships transform. Your power becomes real. The world is cruel to the immature. It doesn't forgive them, and not because it hates the weak, but because it doesn't have time for them. It uses them and discards them. You decide if you want to be part of that manipulable mass, or if you're going to take control once and for all. Maturity is a weapon, use it. Because here's the final blow no one wants to hear. If you don't grow, you get crushed. If you don't learn to control yourself, someone else will do it for you, and then you won't be a man. You'll be a child trapped in a prison you built yourself, with bars made of excuses, poorly managed emotions, and lost opportunities. Machiavelli is not judging you. He is teaching you, but only if you're willing to listen. Only if you have the courage to look in the mirror and recognize the child who still decides for you. Kill him not with hate, with discipline, with strategy, with vision, and only then will you begin to govern yourself and the world. And now let's cross a boundary many prefer to avoid: the relationship between emotional immaturity and the need for validation. Because if there's one thing that defines the man-child, beyond his impulses, it's his insatiable hunger for approval. I'm not talking about the healthy desire for connection. I'm talking about dependency, that emptiness that demands constant applause, that measures its worth in likes, in praise, in other people's attention. Does it sound familiar? Of course it does. You've felt it, you've sought it. You've needed it. The problem is not that you want to be recognized. The problem is that you don't know who you are without that recognition, and that makes you dangerously manipulable. Because any system that knows how to reward you can control you. You don't need iron chains when applause is enough to bind you. Do you know what that means? You're not free. You haven't been in years. And the worst part is you think you are. The man-child confuses being visible with being valuable. He needs to constantly show what he does, what he thinks, what he feels. As if silence were a threat. As if stopping being seen meant ceasing to exist. And do you know what happens when that need mixes with power? Catastrophe, because then every decision stops being strategic and becomes a spectacle. Power stops being a tool and becomes a drug. And here comes another Machiavellian concept no one wants to mention: appearance. Machiavelli didn't deny its importance. On the contrary, he knew that in politics, what appears to be sometimes matters more than what actually is. But he never said you should become a slave to that appearance. The true master manipulates his image. He doesn't live trapped in it. The man-child, on the other hand, fuses with the character. He forgets there's a person behind the mask. He lives to uphold an idealized version of himself until the weight crushes him. And you, how many times have you done the same? How many times have you said what was expected just to be accepted? How many times have you betrayed your values out of fear of rejection? That's pure infantilism. It's not about having emotions. It's about letting those emotions decide for you. About allowing the need for approval to cancel out your judgment. Because here comes the dark twist. The man-child doesn't just destroy himself. He also destroys those who follow him. Because his insecurity is contagious. Because his lack of direction creates chaos. It's not too late for you. But it won't be forever. Decide and do it now. Because the price of continuing to act like a child is paid with your freedom and with your legacy. And if you've made it this far, it's because something inside you has clicked. Maybe you can't explain it, but you feel it, that discomfort, that pang in your chest, that awareness that something doesn't quite add up in the way you live, react, face the world. And that, my friend, is the closest thing to awakening. Not that magical awakening that changes you overnight number. This is slower, painful, uncomfortable, but real. And if you keep going, if you have the courage to look beyond your excuses, maybe you'll start becoming what you always pretended to be. Because let's say it once and for all, without embellishments, maturing is not pretty. It doesn't feel glorious. There are no fireworks. It's silent, solitary, almost always invisible. But when it happens, everything changes. You stop looking for blame. You stop begging for attention. You stop acting to impress and start acting to transform. And in that moment, at that exact point, the child dies and something different is born. A complete human being capable of creating, of sustaining, of leading without destroying himself in the process. But don't get confused. This doesn't mean you should eliminate your emotions. You're not a machine. Emotions are still there, but they no longer rule. They no longer scream over your judgment. You listen to them, yes, but you don't give them the wheel. And that balance is so rare, so powerful, so magnetic that when you achieve it, others notice. You no longer need to impose your voice. Your mere presence speaks. Because someone who has killed the child doesn't need to prove anything. They've already won everything. And now here comes what might be the final blow. The one that stays with you long after you turn off the screen. You don't become an adult when you grow older. You become an adult the day you accept that no one will rescue you. That it's you against your impulses. You against your narratives. You against your most comfortable version. And if you win that battle, Everything else is secondary. Success, recognition, influence, everything comes as a result. Not as a goal, so do this. Go to the comments and write one sentence. Just one, write it as a commitment to yourself. Let it say, today begins my true adulthood. Not for me, not for the channel. For you, because if you don't do it now, you'll keep hiding behind the same mask that no longer works. And you know it, you know it. And if this video hit you in the right spot, subscribe, because what's coming is not comfortable. But it's necessary, and if you want to truly grow here, you'll find exactly what no one else dares to tell you. Like if it moved something in you. Share if you think someone else needs to wake up and turn on the bell. If you don't want to keep living on autopilot. And now listen to me closely. Turn off this video, but don't come back the same. You can't come back the same. Go out into the world knowing the child no longer commands. Go out with the face of the adult who survived the collapse of his ego. Go out and build, but in silence. Let no one know what you're planning until it's too late to stop you. We'll see each other at the top, or we'll see each other from there, while you fall for not changing in time. You decide. Until next time, or as Machiavelli would say, better to be feared for being mature than loved for being immature. Because a leader who doesn't know himself is a broken compass, and no one navigates with that without sinking. Now listen to me closely, there's something even more disturbing. The man-child usually surrounds himself with flatterers, never with critics. Why? Because he can't stand conflict. Because every confrontation feels like a personal attack. He doesn't seek growth, he seeks comfort, and that in any power structure is poison. The environment starts telling him what he wants to hear, not what he needs to hear. And that's how the perfect destruction circle is created. An immature leader surrounded by cowardly yes men. Does this sound familiar? Because we're not just talking about public figures, we're talking about you, me. Anyone who has ever chosen approval over truth. True growth begins when you stop needing applause. When your identity doesn't depend on others' reactions. When you can hold your vision even if you're alone. But there's more. The man-child also doesn't know how to be alone. He's terrified of it, not because of boredom, but because silence forces him to confront himself. And that for an immature person is unbearable. That's why he flees at all costs from emptiness. He fills his life with noise, with people, with useless commitments. But he never faces the mirror. Because if he did, he'd see what he's been avoiding. That his life is a constant flight from himself. And here Machiavelli would speak again. Not to judge you, but to remind you that power without self-knowledge is destruction. That he who doesn't master his inner world will be dominated from the outside. That great leaders are those who've walked through the tunnels of their minds, confronted their shadows and come out with scars, but also with direction. Do you know what maturity is? It's not seriousness, it's not rigidity. It's knowing how to differentiate between what you want now and what truly benefits you in the long term. It's postponing gratification without getting frustrated. It's saying no even if it hurts. It's holding your decisions when everyone doubts. It's failing and not using the mistake as an excuse. And that can only be achieved by someone who is left behind, the capricious child within us. But there's something even more powerful than all this. True emotional maturity involves radical responsibility. No blaming, no excuses. No, I'm just like that. It's recognizing that every action of yours has an impact. That your emotional outbursts affect others. That your immaturity can ruin relationships, destroy projects, burn bridges. And do you know what? No one cares what you felt at that moment. Only the damage remains, only the consequence. The world doesn't judge your intention, it judges your result, and that's the point that almost no one accepts. Not maturing is a choice. It's not that you can't. It's that you don't want to, because growing hurts. Because maturing means giving up immediate pleasure. It means accepting that no one will come to save you, that you are the final responsible for what happens or doesn't happen in your life. And that weighs, but it also frees. Do you want to stop being a man-child? Start by learning to be uncomfortable, to stay in silence without running, to say no without guilt, to act without witnesses, to build even when no one applauds, to resist when everything inside you screams, to react, to think before speaking, to observe before acting, to hold yourself up even if you're trembling inside. Because here comes the most brutal truth of all. No one is going to mature you. No one will teach you to be emotionally strong. You do that in solitude, in moments of tension, in invisible decisions. Every time you choose to respond instead of react, you grow. Every time you decide not to enter into drama, you strengthen yourself. Every time you prioritize the long term over immediate satisfaction, you become more powerful, and that power, the one that isn't seen, the one that doesn't need approval, the one that doesn't shout, the one that doesn't look for excuses, is the only one that can govern a life. The rest is theater, it's inflated ego. It's poorly managed childhood. It's ruin disguised as success. And you, are you going to keep applauding your inner child, or are you going to start building from the brutal maturity of one who no longer seeks to be loved but to be effective? Because if you don't kill the child will kill you, and he won't do it with a knife. He'll do it with impulsive decisions, unnecessary words, repeated mistakes, and broken relationships. He'll do it slowly without you noticing. Until one day, you wake up and realize your whole life has been a reaction. And by then it's too late.